So let's talk about the Battle of Leipzig. Back in October 1813, pretty much the entire fate of Europe was hanging in the balance right there. And this wasn't just another battle. They called it the Battle of the Nations for a reason. This was the big one, the decisive showdown that would absolutely shatter Napoleon's control over Germany and really set the stage for his final downfall.
Which brings us to a huge question, right? How do you actually defeat an emperor? Especially an emperor like Napoleon, a guy who, for all intents and purposes, seemed invincible. Well, Europe finally figured out the answer: unity. For the very first time, all the big players, we're talking Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Sweden, they actually managed to put their own rivalries aside. They had one single, all-consuming goal: stop Napoleon, once and for all.
Okay, so how did we even get to this point? Let's take a quick look. It all really kicks off in 1812 with Napoleon's disastrous invasion of Russia. I mean, his legendary Grande Armée, it was just virtually wiped out during that brutal retreat from Moscow. And that failure was the signal. It was exactly what the rest of Europe had been waiting for. So come early 1813, a brand new Sixth Coalition pops up, and they're all converging on Napoleon for this huge final showdown at Leipzig that October.
And this leads us to what you could call the Emperor's Gamble. You see, even after that absolute catastrophe in Russia, Napoleon was far from finished. He raced back to France and honestly pulled off what seemed like a miracle. He raised a whole new army to take on, well, basically the entire continent. But here's the catch. This new army, yeah, it was massive, but it was just a shadow of its former self. We're talking about an army filled with teenagers, with raw, inexperienced conscripts. A lot of them had barely any training and, frankly, didn't really want to be there. So Napoleon had the numbers, but he was missing those grizzled, hardened veterans who had won him a continent. His new army was fragile, and you can bet his enemies knew it. And those enemies, they had a really clever plan. It was called the Trachenberg Plan, and it was brilliant because it was so simple. The strategy was basically avoid Napoleon. Don't fight him directly if you can help it. Instead, they would systematically go after the armies commanded by his marshals one by one. It was a way to just chip away at Napoleon's forces, weaken his whole command structure, and basically take his personal battlefield genius out of the equation.
So, all of this culminates in what became known as the Battle of Nations. And I really want to be clear about the scale we're talking about here. For more than 100 years until World War I, this was the single largest and bloodiest battle ever fought in Europe. I mean, it was a true clash of empires that just dwarfed everything that came before it.
Just look at this number, roughly 560,000 soldiers. That is insane. More than 500,000 people all converging on one spot to fight. To give you some perspective, that's like taking the entire population of a city like Lisbon and dropping them all onto a single battlefield. The scale is just, it's hard to even wrap your head around. And of course, with all those soldiers came the firepower, something like 2,200 cannons. It's estimated that around 400,000 artillery rounds were fired during the battle. Can you just imagine the noise? A constant, deafening, earth-shaking roar that just went on for 4 straight days. So let's break down the numbers, because these were the odds Napoleon was up against. By the time we get to day 3, the coalition has amassed nearly 360,000 soldiers and 1,500 cannons. Napoleon, he's got about 195,000 men and 900 guns. He was outnumbered almost 2-to-1 in everything that mattered. He was well and truly caught in a trap, and you could feel the jaws just closing in. All right, so let's get into the battle itself. The net is closing. We're talking 4 absolutely brutal days of fighting, from October 16th to the 19th. And in this chaotic, bloody mess around the city of Leipzig, the entire fate of Napoleon's empire is about to be decided. So, Day 1, October 16th. The fighting is just ferocious. Napoleon throws everything he has at them, launching these massive attacks. He's trying to find a weak spot to smash through the coalition lines before they can get all their troops in place, but it doesn't work. The Allies just hold. The day ends in a bloody stalemate, which is a disaster for Napoleon because he knows more and more enemy reinforcements are showing up every hour. And that brings us to the critical moment. After a brief pause, the battle kicks off again on October 18th. By now, Napoleon's army is stretched to its absolute breaking point. But his fate wasn't going to be sealed by some brilliant military maneuver. Nope. It was going to be sealed by betrayal. Right in the heat of battle, Napoleon's Saxon allies, about 5,400 of them, suddenly just switch sides. They literally turn their guns around and start firing on their former French comrades. A huge section of Napoleon's line just collapses. And this wasn't just about losing a few thousand troops, it was the psychological blow. It was the moment everyone realized it's over. Okay, so the battle is lost. Now the only thing that matters is getting out alive. Napoleon orders a retreat, but what should have been a somewhat orderly withdrawal just turns into an absolute unmitigated catastrophe. And it all came down to one bridge and one terrible mistake. So here's what happened. The entire French army had to retreat over a single bridge. The plan was to blow the bridge after everyone was safely across. But in all the chaos, the responsibility falls to this one nervous corporal. He sees Allied troops approaching, he doesn't know the full schedule, and he panics. He lights the fuse way too early, and boom, the only escape route is gone. The result? A total disaster. We're talking 30,000 French soldiers, including the entire rear guard that was supposed to cover the retreat, trapped in the city. They were just left stranded. Thousands were captured, many others drowned trying to swim the river, including one of Napoleon's most loyal marshals. It was just a catastrophic end to an already crushing defeat. And the consequences of this defeat, well, they were huge. Leipzig wasn't just a battle lost. This was the moment the entire Napoleonic Empire began to completely unravel. I mean, look at these numbers. The human cost alone was just staggering. Over 100,000 casualties in total. Politically, it was a seismic event. The Confederation of the Rhine, which was basically Napoleon's collection of puppet states in Germany, it just dissolved, literally overnight. French control east of the Rhine was finished. And more importantly, the road to Paris was now wide open for the Allies, which led directly to Napoleon's first abdication in 1814. You know, maybe Napoleon himself put it best. When he finally got back to France, he reportedly said, "A year ago, all Europe marched with us. Today, all Europe marches against us." I mean, that's a pretty stunning admission of just how completely his world had been turned upside down. So that kind of leaves us with one final thought. We all know Napoleon comes back for that one last stand at Waterloo, right? But was Leipzig the moment the magic was really gone? Was this the battle that truly shattered the myth of his invincibility and marked the real beginning of the end for the emperor himself?